Gilgamesh was the son of the cow goddess Nasuna, the great queen and priestess of Shamash, the sun god, and his father, Lila, a famous priest of Kalama. Gilgamesh was the ruler of a Sumerian city called Uruk. This city would have been fortified into one of the most powerful cities of its time. It is believed that Gilgamesh was the fifth king of the city. Gilgamesh is of divine origin because he possesses 2 parts god and 1 part human, which gives him several divine characteristics, such as strength and especially size. Gilgamesh is a man with a truly impressive physique who exceeds the average height of the Iraqi people. Gilgamesh is shown to be one of the most powerful men on earth, and his kingdom is filled with whims and mayhem that no one on earth can cope with or even reject. Decree of the king, son of the gods. Gilgamesh was shown to all the people as vile and corrupt, as his decisions overrode the people of Uruk, abusing his power drastically and causing great discontent throughout the kingdom. Gilgamesh was so powerful and scary that even in some of the laws he established, he said that every woman in Europe had to sleep with the king before marrying her husband. For many, this causes great resentment toward women's privacy and dignity, and therefore toward their future husbands. However, nothing could be done because he was the supreme king, and if anyone did not agree with his orders, he would be immediately punished and condemned in Iraq. The people were tired and afraid of Gilgamesh's reign, and they begged and begged the goddess of creation, in her downfall, to remedy the situation and take over Gilgamesh's reign. The goddess Ninhosak, the woman of the mountain, by the actions of mercy, would have listened and decided to help the unfortunate people of Iraq, her son. When Subsidence created a mystical creature and wild by taking clay and giving him a humanoid form with the features of a beast, Minasag gave this mysterious creature the name Enkidu and also gave him great power so that he could face and, above all, defeat the great Gilgamesh and drop him on earth, telling him to fight so that Uruk would know peace that Enkidu had come to earth as a man. The wild man has a rustic and primitive appearance. He wore long, heavy animal skins to cover his body, and in front of the Iraqi people, he was a wild creature. The woman on the subsided mountain left her Enkidu in the forest, so that he alone can go to Gilgamesh's room. But unfortunately, he was wandering in the forest, surrounded by extraordinary nature. Savage must have forgotten his duty. Enkidu plunged into a terrible omission, still attached to the freedom of the forest. The days passed, and he could no longer remember it. What is the main purpose for which he came to earth? It ate and drank like other animals in the forest, roamed the desert, and was even considered one of the kingdoms of wild animals. Then 9 people, witnessing everything that was happening, were very worried about Enkidu because he behaved like a real beast and decided to take control of the uncontrollable event. However, she was not successful. Enkidu was disoriented and overwhelmed by a feeling of such wildness that he could not regain his senses and could not even follow his creator's orders. He knew that this was a big problem, and on top of the huge delay in helping the people of Iraq, who were under the yoke of Gilgamesh, one day a hunter was grazing his cattle. Very close to the forest was still leading his cattle to a forest source of drinking water. That day, standing in front of the child, surrounded by a herd of antelope drinking water, the hunter was so scared that he couldn't move for a few minutes. When he regained consciousness, he saw his face and realized it was not an ordinary animal, but a man covered with fur like an animal. The hunter did not flinch, but was stunned. Fear seized the poor man who was traveling with his herd, and when he regained consciousness, he returned home to his father and told him all that had happened. What he saw the hunter say to his father: "My father was a man from the mountains, his weight was felt in the countryside, and he had the vitality of a knight of Anu. He constantly traveled around the country with his cattle. He always strutted around the neighborhood, and in places where there was water, he set his feet. I was so scared that I didn't dare go near him. He filled the ditch, I opened it, he broke the trap, and I set him so that the animals escaped from my hands, and he also prevented me from hunting on the plain." The father, on hearing such a story, told him that there is no creature with more vitality and much worse than Gilgamesh, because he was the only one sent by the gods to protect and rule Uruk, and he concluded by saying that he should go to Gilgamesh's throne and inform him of such a fascinating situation. The hunter went to the palace, and in front of King Gilgamesh, he told him about the beast he had seen in the forest, looking for answers. So the king told him to go find Shomat, a man whose women were taken as sacred prostitutes from the temples of Uruk, to transform him from a wild animal into a civilized human being. Gilgamesh tells the noble hunter that Shomat should seduce Enkidu, and then he should have sex for 6 days and 7 nights continuously, so that through sex the inside will be enlightened and civilized. At that time, Ninhursag delivered the power of Kuzbu, or the seductive power of Shomat, to Enkidu to fulfill the request. Shomat, when Gilgamesh entrusted him through the hunter who seduced Enkidu with lust, and they only had intercourse for 6 days and 7 nights, after which the creature understood many things and remembered what the goddess had commanded at first. Enkidu was not entirely convinced by Gilgamesh's idea that the king had described this hideous creature as one that breathed the fire of death. However, the king was so determined that Enkidu finally accepted Gilgamesh's crazy idea. In the year, the king told his new friend that they would be so strong between them that they would be able to kill the forest beasts with ease, and not only that, but the forest would now be liberated so that humanity would be able to enter without fear. Quickly, the Uruk king ordered the production of the best weapons for the historic confrontation, and these weapons must be produced before the brave people who will fight against Tambaba. On the day 2 of Uruk's strongest men began their journey on the outskirts of the walled city, they kneeled and prayed. The god Shamash helped him in battle and, above all, brought him back alive to Uruk, and so they set out, knowing that the journey was a bit long as it would take them several days to reach the cedar forest. During the journey, Gilgamesh had terrible nightmares, and every night Enkidu was confused by Gilgamesh's many moans. This frightened Enkidu, but in the morning, Gilgamesh encouraged and persuaded him to continue on this giant journey. They continued for many long days until they saw in the distance giant cedar trees, which warned that their destination was in sight. So when Enkidu arrived, he had an expression of terror because he was afraid of the giant guardian. People live in the forest. On the other hand, Gilgamesh is completely convinced of victory because, with his great and powerful friends, they are once again indestructible. The king encourages Enkidu to pursue courage. Enkidu shows feelings of anger and follows Gilgamesh into the forest. Searching for the terrifying Hambaba did not take much time, and to their surprise, they stood before the terrible monster. Then a feeling of fear came over Gilgamesh, who at first had not a drop of fear. Enkidu looked at Gilgamesh's disheveled face and returned the favor. This time it was he who encouraged him and hit him with a cry, reminding him of his mission. Within seconds, they were back at the battle position duel, and the two rushed into battle against the fearsome giant. The battle was with Bloody, the beast of great power. For a moment, it seemed that he would win the battle, but the god Shamash witnessed the battle and decided to help Gilgamesh. So he sent out 13 resounding victories with just one finger. Gilgamesh and Ankita took advantage of God's divine help, and with human cunning and agility, they succeeded in overthrowing. Humbaba was already on the ground, and the giant begged for his life. However, Enkidu was determined to kill him, the monster Humbaba, with his last breath before dying with the curse. Man was killed by Gilgamesh Enkidu, and Gilgamesh celebrated his victory with tears and laughter by defeating the giant Humbaba. They left the cedar forest from evil, now convinced that the power they possessed was of divine origin and that their power was so great that no creature on earth could defeat them. Because the gods always watch over humans. And in this case, they witnessed the fight of the Iraqi men against the giant Humbaba of the defenders. So Ishtar looked straight at Gilgamesh. Ishtar was so fascinated by Gilgamesh's appearance and strength that she immediately thought of proposing something to him, so that no one would refuse to approach Ishtar, the king of the Uruk, and offer to be his lover. Ishtar was a goddess of love and fertility, famous for having many lovers, and the love of this beautiful young goddess was considered very dangerous for Gilgamesh. The proposal was a simple mockery, as he would not accept such a proposal without any reason, so in strong words, he told the goddess that he doesn't accept being her lover and that he doesn't want to have any relationship with her. The goddess Ishtar felt very offended at being rejected by the immortals, then cursed Gilgamesh and retired to the room of her father, Anu, the god of heaven. Gilgamesh ignored the goddess's words and continued on his way. However, as for the goddess, the rejection caused her so much pain that when she arrived at her father's palace, she complained endlessly and begged once more to punish Gilgamesh for this great mistake. He sinned. Ishtar told his father to create a celestial bull, or the cow of heaven, so that Gilgamesh would feel what true fear is and thus be able to take revenge on the hero. He also told him that if he did not do what the goddess asked him, he would break the door of the underworld and dig up more dead than living. Anu was surprised at what his daughter said and was very doubtful of this plan, but before the threat of the goddess decided to do it, Anu told his daughter that he would do it. But she must understand that if he accepted, the land would go through 7 years of scarcity and drought, and at the end, he asked the goddess if she had gathered enough, providing for humans and animals during this time of scarcity and famine. Ishtar responded to her by saying that I had stored grain for humans and would have father's provisions for the animals. The earth had been barren for 7 years, so a new beast sent a terrible beast to earth. At first, this beast killed hundreds of people with just its breath and gradually spread fear in the city. In Iraq, the bull of heaven was so fearful in the city that many people begged the king to defeat the monsters and save Uruk from destruction and famine. Enkidu listened to the pleas of the men of the city. They depict the beast every day as a truly evil demon, and then Enkidu decides to confront the beast with Gilgamesh after encountering the beast. Enkidu rushed forward and grabbed her with his huge, sharp horns, as if trying to overpower her. For his part, Gilgamesh fought the animal below with all his might and his great swords, whereupon the bull foamed at the mouth and fell to the ground with a loud roar. Enkidu saw this fall, and the great celestial bull said to Gilgamesh's friend, "We have won." so they both tore out the terrible monster's heart, and in gratitude, they offered it to the god Shamash. In Iraq, the entire people were grateful for the great actions of the heroes and were congratulated for their great achievement of saving the entire country. On the other hand, Ishtar was extremely angry that her plan had failed, and not only that, she also felt insulted by the murder. The monster she commanded through her father, the goddess, came close to the wall of Iraq to see what was going on, and when Enkidu saw her, he quickly cut off the bull's parts and threw them into the goddess, who told her that if she dared to enter Uruk in the future, he will do the same thing to her as he did to the bull that night. Gilgamesh held a feast in his palace in the name of the victory achieved. Everyone attended the great event honoring two great heroes. That the city of Iraq had Enkidu in his house. While he was resting, he had a fascinating dream, and most of all, it made him very scared because of that dream. He saw the decision of his death in the morning. Enkidu told Gilgamesh to listen to the dream I had tonight. Anu Enlil and the sky god Shamash gathered at the council, and Anu told Ea that they killed the angels Bul and Humbaba, who lived on the Cedars Mountain. They must be executed, but little is reciprocated. Enkidu must die, and Gilgamesh must not die. Gilgamesh responded to him with words of encouragement, and lo and behold, he went to the temple of Shamash to pray for his great friend. Ishtar was very angry and returned to ask her father, Anu, to punish those who killed the divine beasts. A new god and the other gods decide what the punishment will be for insulting the divine power, because Enkidu and Gilgamesh killed the heavenly bull and the giant Humbaba, and such actions are not unforgivable amidst the wrath of the gods, so they decided to punish Enkidu with death. However, Shamash opposed this, but Anu's power was much greater than Shamash's, and they decided to kill Enkidu. Enkidu was very curious about the dream, so he did it. However, he continued to live a normal life at the palace of Uruk with his good friend Gilgamesh. Unfortunately, as the days passed, Enkidu became more and more sick, after which Enkidu blamed him and regretted his actions. Uruk became civilized because of his destiny. Having been dead for a long time, Gilgamesh constantly went to the temple of Shamash to pray for Enkidu's health, but was unsuccessful because, with each passing moment, Enkidu became worse and worse, until one day, exhausted, he died. Gilgamesh touched his friend's body, and his heart stopped beating and his breathing stopped, realizing that Enkidu was gone. Gilgamesh burst into tears and despair, clutching Enkidu's body and together naming each of their actions. Gilgamesh was inconsolable when left alone, and his adventure companion was sentenced to death. The fear of death arose in Gilgamesh's mind, because he didn't want to die like Enkidu. King Uruk feared death and became so desperate that next to Enkidu's inert body, he made a difficult decision. Gilgamesh told the entire royal family and other residents that he would leave to look for eternal life because he did not want the same end as his dear friend. Now he was looking for immortality. Gilgamesh remembered that on Earth only 2 humans had achieved immortality due to it being the gods who gave it, so he decided to go find them and ask for help and to find out what he must do to receive this blessing, and that his wife is the only human who received immortality after surviving the cataclysm, which was intended to destroy humanity when they learned about this event. Gilgamesh decided to make a journey into the couple's room. The king of Uruk was preparing for a long journey to find Anapishtim, and for him, Eternal life passed by as days passed, and the journey seemed longer and longer until he reached the two mountains where the sun rises. And at the entrance to these mountains, Gilgamesh kept his eyes fixed on the strange creatures coming towards him. Gilgamesh was initially very scared and thought that this would be his end. Gilgamesh's vision was clear, and he could see they were the famous scorpion people. Guardians of the mountains, Gilgamesh was dumbfounded with fear, for everyone knew that these creatures were mortal. Their heads touched each other, their horizons and chests touched the hills, and the man Scorpio, the guardians of the gate of the sun, had awakened a great terror, and above all, those who see them die. Gilgamesh did not allow himself to be overcome by fear, so he decided to pay homage and bow to the scorpion man who was at the mountain gate. The scorpion man looked at him from afar and said to his wife, "Look at this man." Having a beautiful figure, signifying great strength, the woman immediately replied that the man who has two of his three parts is God, and the remaining part is the man who is now facing Gilgamesh. The Scorpio man asked him from afar, "You came to me, why did you cross the turbulent seas on your journey to me? What purpose brought you here?" Then Gilgamesh respectfully replied, "I came because of a realization of my ancestors, who knew how to reach the assembly of gods and obtain eternal life. I wanted to ask him about death and life." And then the Scorpio man was surprised by Gilgamesh's answer, and not only that but also by the path the hero took. So he told him that "I believe that no mortal has ever reached this point. No one has ever traveled the 12-mile road up the mountain." He also told him that darkness reigned in this place and that no light shone at dawn or dusk. Gilgamesh was determined to overcome all the ups and downs that the path had in store for him and speak with pain or sadness because of heat or cold, sigh or groan. "I will continue to speak. Now I open the mountain door." The Scorpio man said that he would open the door for him because he is England mighty and because he arrived unharmed at the mountain gate, where the sun rises and the sun sets. Gilgamesh thanked the Scorpio men who guarded Marshu and went down the path. As he advanced, the darkness grew thicker and thicker, until he reached a point where he could see absolutely nothing in front of or behind him in any direction, despite Gilgamesh's extreme fear. He moved forward relentlessly. He knew that he must not be weak. He had to move forward and pursue his goal. He had not seen a single ray of light for many days, and it is believed that the darkness grew thicker, and about 9 miles away, he felt a strong wind blowing from the north, 11 miles away. However, during the year, he saw a small light coming from Alba. He continued without stopping and traveled 12 miles. Gilgamesh finally saw the sunlight. Gilgamesh was really happy because, finally, his vision cleared, and the first thing he saw was a giant monster. Resplendent tree, he went there with joy, and when he came near such a magnificent tree, he saw that its fruits were the most beautiful, bright rubies. He lay still on the spot and a shrill voice eared toward Gilgamesh, "It comes from God." Shamash, who asked him why he was wandering from place to place meaninglessly, finally told him that the life he was looking for would never be found. Gilgamesh replied to God that after stopping on the plain at the center of the starless world, the earth, where my steps seemed to last for years, I wanted my eyes to behold the sun and be filled with streams of light. Gilgamesh continued on his way. And suddenly he noticed a woman looking at him with horror because of his clothes, and her appearance was so nauseating that the woman, that person, was scared and immediately entered his pub, blocking the door so that strangers would not enter when you saw him. "What is it?" The innkeeper bowed his head, and with what little strength he had left, she told him not to be afraid and that he would do nothing to him. So the woman went out and told Gilgamesh the reason for his exhaustion and this little power. This he points out, and, above all, what is the purpose of wandering alone in the bush? Gilgamesh sadly recounted all he had experienced in Europe to Enkidu and also told him that he was searching for Anapishtim because he would help him achieve Sidhui immortality. The innkeeper told him not to wander through life aimlessly because the creator gods created humans and decreed that they must die. She also told him that he must enjoy everything that life has to offer. Life gives, and even the little things that life gives you. However, Sidhui's words were in vain, as Gilgamesh covered his ears and decided to continue his journey to Anapishtim. Gilgamesh then asked Sidhui for directions, saying he should go to Anapishtim's residence. The tavern owner told him that it was a journey full of ups and downs, and he had to cross the scariest and deadliest water in the world, and to cross it, he had to cross it with the greatest Shinabi, a divine boatman who knew the sea and the island where Anapishtim lived with his wife. Sidhui tries to stop Gilgamesh, as no one has ever crossed the waters of death. However, Gilgamesh tells him to take him to his Shinabi to begin his journey. He came to Yoshinabi's boat, and Gilgamesh told him all his story and the purpose of the journey, whereupon Yoshinabi agreed to help him, and so they left for the island, heading to the sea and passing through the deadly waters. Yoshinabi told Gilgamesh that his hands should not touch the water, and so after a moment, the boatman took his eyes off the island, announcing that they had reached the siesta. On the other hand, from the shore of the island, Anapishtim carefully observed the forest. The Shinabi always went alone and no one else came, so that they were even less immortal, and quickly Gilgamesh gave a little greeting to Utnapishtim, and told him his story. Amidst tears and laughter, he welcomed him into his home, which was the product of the giant ship after the cataclysm he survived. Anapishtim told Gilgamesh that in order to he understood why the gods gave him the gift of immortality and how all this helped him become a member of the Council of Gods, he must have known and understood the whole story happened with the cataclysm, who wiped out almost all of humanity, told him that he would reveal the great hidden secret, and so he began to tell him the whole story on the piston. Start by saying that many years ago, the city of Shurpak, a city that stretched along the banks of the Euphrates River, was a city as ancient as their gods. When they decided to release the flood, when they decided that this event will take place, they were Anu, the father of the gods, brave and Lil, his advisor, Nanurda Energic Athenia said, Napishtim in the name of all the gods, will demolish the hut of him and abandon it. All the wealth for something huge that's about to happen. Likewise, yes, he told him to build a large ship of great size, equal in height and length, and it should also have a strong roof. I also attacked the piston so that on the side it could contain all living creatures and as many seeds as possible, for there would be a new beginning for humanity. God told the piston that, since Lil was the protagonist and author of the Great Flood, it must be released, and no divine power could stop it. Then Anapishtim understood the significance of what was about to happen, and filled with fear, he said, Yes, it is an honor for me to carry out what you have commanded, but what will I tell the city to you villagers and elders? Athenia replied to him, You will tell them this. I learned that Lil is my enemy, so I cannot live in my city, nor can I set foot on Lil's territory, so I will go to deep waters to live with my lord. So Anapishtim quickly started building. He gave notice to all his family, and soon they had a large part of the giant ship, the elevation, and so on the 5th day, he erected a frame whose bottom was an acre, and each side of it was 10 cubits high, and 10 cubits on each side by the bridge. And so at the end of the 7th day, the ship was completed and began to be assembled. Day after day, the animals he brought on board, many vines, seeds, meat, and other food, as the Quadia had told him about everything, were preparing a correspondence. The only thing he was waiting for was a sign from the gods. When they unleashed the deluge, Shamash came to him and told him when the great storm would come, and told him that immediately when night falls, God appears, and the first drops of rain fall, he should get into the boat and close all the doors. Was very good. A perceiver was waiting for the right moment, and as soon as he saw a big black cloud approaching, he knew it was time to go up, so he told Pusramari, who rowed the boat out of order and closed all doors very tight for 6 days and 6 nights. The flood winds blew, and the southern storm swept across the mainland. On the 7th day, the storm began to calm down, the sea calmed down, the storm stopped, and then the flood subsided. Looking through a small hatch, we could see if the big storm had subsided. Did you look over it? The hole his eyes saw was faint light passing through the hatch, and beyond he saw water everywhere. And humanity now mud saw that in each of the 14 regions there was a mountain surfaced, and the great ship he had built stopped on the Nazir mountain without letting it move, releasing the pigeon, which flew away quickly but returned immediately because it could not find a place near the light. So he released a swallow, and like a dove, it immediately flew back, then released a crow. And it was different because it didn't turn back but flew until it disappeared. It waited for a push, but the crow didn't turn back, so it decided it was time for everyone to leave. However, he took out everything, and when he was done, he made a sacrifice on the top of the mountain, next to 7 bonfires, and Lil complained to the other gods for helping Piston. For every living thing must die, yet the gods did it for no reason, and in Lil, because of the persistence of perception, they went to find him to compensate him. So Lil got into the Piston boat and called his wife, and there he made them kneel and told them a realization. You are only human, but from this moment on, you and your wife will be like gods. He took their hands and placed his hand on each of their foreheads, giving them immortality. He told Gilgamesh that it had happened in that, thanks to the gods and the great sacrifices he made during the great flood, he was blessed, after which Gilgamesh told him that he wanted the same thing but helped him achieve immortality by participating in a meeting with the gods. Anapiston told him that he must first pass a test before agreeing to help her. Gilgamesh tells him that he will try his best to gain eternal life, and then Anapiston tells him that he must stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights, and if he succeeds, he will practice with the gods, thanks to which he will gain immortality. However, Gilgamesh agreed. As soon as he settled down to rest from the deep sleep, it enveloped him, and he immediately fainted, telling his wife to look at the strong man who desired the sleep. Immortal sleep, like a raging wind, enveloped him, so the woman told him to wake up the poor boy, and she will prepare food for him. Return to Piston, approach Gilgamesh, and wake him up by shaking him. Then King Uruk wakes up in his sleep, very scared because he failed the test. Did not help him, and with an angry voice told him to return with Ushanabi, on the way to Uruk's, that he might return safely. Gilgamesh was sorry for what had happened and begged him to throw it go. Confused, help him. However, He is not willing to help because he thinks he is not worthy. On the other hand, Piston's wife told him to help her, poor Gilgamesh, because he had come so far, had been victorious throughout his journey, and it was right to help him. So a consciousness called Gilgamesh, who had left the boat, told him that he would only help him because he was a brave man, but pointed out to him that what he would reveal to him would not give him immortality, but he would receive more life and youth. Gilgamesh gratefully and flatteringly thanked him for this act of the immortal Anapestic, and his wife told him that at the bottom of the sea, there was a plant that would give him life above life and that he would be young again when he ate it by leaving his old one behind the skin and exchanged it for a new one. Young Gilgamesh undressed and rushed in just as the couple said, tying a large rock to his feet. When he reached the bottom, he saw a tree very similar to Lily's thorn. He took it and walked out of the water, so happy and grateful that Gilgamesh was finally one step closer to immortality, and so grateful that he got on the boat that time and told the shinobi to take it. He returned to the bow and was there. They will eat the fruit and give miraculous plans to the people. They returned to Uruk, and on the way, Gilgamesh saw a beautiful, clear stream and told the shinobi to go there to rest and bathe. They did so, and Gilgamesh undressed and entered the fountain, still wearing his clothes, and the magic tree at the edge of the fountain. However, Gilgamesh did not consider that this plant emitted an extremely strong smell, attracting the attention of a snake that stealthily approached the tree. Gilgamesh did not notice the hidden beast, and when he turned back to look at the tree, the magic as he fought was so powerful that the snake swallowed the entire tree without leaving a single leaf behind. Gilgamesh cried before death because he did not believe what was happening. The tree with which he had experienced the worst ups and downs no longer existed. The snake swallowed him whole, and before Gilgamesh's eyes, the snake left behind his old skin and continued on its way with young, beautiful skin. Gilgamesh entered again and cried endlessly, pitifully. There was nothing he could do. His journey had failed because, in the end, he did not achieve what he had always dreamed of. One day, Gilgamesh bitterly returned to Uruk, and in the far city, he saw the great walls he had built and told the shinobi who was with them to admire the great work he had done in his country. City, and so he returned empty-handed but with many new experiences and lessons that would make him wiser.